Well, we finished the carvings, got both of these here. This one I've gone ahead and burned the detail on, and we'll do that on the other one here in just a second. I just wanted to show you, here's a good tip, make you a couple of these things just using an old piece of dowel or something, and get you a screw and epoxy it in the end. That way you can find a place that's not going to be obvious in your carving and screw it in there, and it'll give you something to hold this thing as you're working with them, painting them, because you don't want to handle them with your hands. You'll get all kinds of oil and dirt on them. So anyway, this one's all done, so now we're going to burn this one here. Okay, got my burner here, and we're not going to burn it a lot. Just want to sort of highlight the holes, not the holes, highlight the bone plates. Just a little dark there. On your eyes, make sure you rough them up a little on the edges. See how much better that looks than if it was just perfectly straight and smooth. And when you're doing things like this, if there's one thing I'd like to impress upon you, is take your time, do the research, and try to get it as close to the real thing as possible. You don't want your skull looking like a cow skull, because it's not. It's a buffalo skull. That's why it's important to get your horns correct, the shape of the skull correct, because if you don't, it's just not going to look right, and you're not going to be satisfied with it. And although people might say, oh, you're doing a wonderful job, oh, isn't that terrific, all that stuff, you know, it's yourself you have to be satisfied with, not them. I just noticed something I haven't drilled through there yet. Well, golly. I can't remember if we did that. I think we did that. This is my backup skull here. Got so many skulls in the works here, it's hard to keep track of them. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That's all we need to do there. But there's a couple more things you want to get. You want to get these holes, nerve holes, vein holes. You just do that with your burning pan. Makes all the difference in the world to getting those things in there. Alright, now on the horns, same thing on the horns. You don't want to have all these even surfaces. They're kind of rough. So just a few little indentations here and there. Make them look that much better. And take your burning pen and just highlight them. This is going to be painted black, so it's really not critical that you. So when you paint it, and that'll look a lot better. Okay? So now, after we get this other horn done, it'll be off to the sanding station, and I'll sneak over and drill out those holes again. Okay, I'm over here at the sanding station. Got my flap sander here. I'm going to very gently go over this. My horns, always support the end of your horn. That's that. So now it's over to the paint station. We're over here. Now one thing you'll notice with these is the horns aren't exactly the same. And even this one skull looks like it's a little larger than the other. That's okay, because no buffalo skull is exactly the same as the other buffalo skull, but yet the anatomy is correct. That's the important thing, is the anatomy. You know, every once in a while you have to stop and take a look at your piece and see how you're doing compared to what it is in real life, if that's what you're trying to capture. And that's what we're doing here. Okay? So just take a second and review yourself as you're going along. Alrighty. Notice this one here has a little more bump on the top of his head than the other one, but it still looks okay. Anyway, let's get going here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is take my horns off. I'll paint the skull first. Get out my water. Well, actually, I'll just take these and dip them in there, just like that. Now, notice how they changed color? Now that works to our benefit, because contrary to popular belief, bones are not pure white. And if you try to make them pure white, your carving's just going to not look right. So here I've got my white. These are the colors we're going to use. We're going to use white, yellow ochre, midnight blue, and naturally black, and probably a little dark burnt umber for the horns. Okay? But we're going to start with white. So I'm going to squeeze me out a good dot here of that. Get my big old A-N brush here. And just start putting this on here. And you don't need to watch me lay all this color on, because all I'm doing is painting this thing white. Okay, we've got the white on there. And you can see, hopefully, that the wood is still showing back through. The color of the wood is still showing back through. This white has just a little bit of yellowish cast to it. That's fine, because bone is not white. It has color to it. And although white is a color, I guess, we're going to put a little more. So I've squeezed me out a little bit of yellow ochre here. We're not going to use very much of this. We're just going to use a little of it to highlight certain areas of the skull. I just want to wash it out. The last thing we want is a pure white skull. The color of the prairie is dry and yellow except in the springtime. So you got to sort of place your figure or what you're doing in the situation that it would be in real life. So this guy is laying out on the prairie. It's hot. It's dry. It's yellow. So that's what we're going to make it. See there, it already makes it look better. Now, what else do we have out on the prairie? Well, up there in Montana, it's where his skull is. What's Montana known for? Well, it's the big sky country, so we've got lots of sky up there. So, like my old art teacher said, you've got to paint reflections of what is surrounding your figure. So we've got sky, and the sky is blue. So we're going to put a little blue on this piece to indicate that there's some blue Montana sky out there. Doesn't take much, just a little bit, This area back in here, we'll put a little bit more in just to create some shadow and interest. Down in that crack there. That looks pretty good, except for that spot right there. Lots of sky on the high points. That looks pretty good, I think. Put a little extra blue down in here. Bring that forward. And underneath here, this will probably never show. We'll put some in here. Just in case someone happens to pick this thing up and look underneath. I'll show you a little trick here. If you get your brush real wet and you just paint it over the surface, you get what you want. Is you want water down in all those little cracks. Get your fine brush, get you a little darker color. And if you touch it in the deepest crack, your the water will just wick it down into the other cracks, hopefully. See that? See it crawl? Did you see that? See that? See how it crawls? That's how you can highlight areas without, having to paint into them. So let's just review that again. First of all, we're going to sort of flood the area with water. Make sure we don't have any bubbles in there. Get a little bit of the paint. Doesn't take much. And you want to touch the deepest crevice, right there. See how that wicked? Really wicked there. See, it just crawls around. And you can do the same on these cracks. See, well, now if you notice it didn't crawl, that's because it wasn't wet. So we'll wet it down. We'll take a little of the color and we'll just touch it. Right there, see? Even help it along a little if you want. I'll even do it here by those nerve holes. There we go. Okay, so now we got our white on there, so the next step is the black for the eyeballs. So I'm going to speed up the process here and dry this thing out, okay? Okay, now we're going to paint the eyeballs. Now I don't want too much water when I'm doing this because I don't want that water to crawl. And the first thing I'm going to have to do is change brushes. Maybe not, you'll see. Yes, it will. I just want a thick, I want a thin rim around the eye. I'm gonna hear about jerking this thing around again, like in a little bit. That looks pretty good. so let me do the other one. So I'll go ahead and do this one and come back. Okay, I've got my eyes painted, and what I'm doing now is I'm accentuating these grooves to make them look a lot better. I want that rugged, rough outline of the eye sockets. That's what I'm after. And also, I took my black and I put it down in here just to create a little depth. What are we looking at? Okay. We can actually do it back in here. To do the same thing. You can paint these little areas like this. Rinse your brush out and then flood them with water, and that'll pull that color out to where it's even. I like the way that crawl there looks nice. Okay, so we're finished with that thaw for the moment. So I'm just going to set him aside there somehow. Get my horns. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is dip them in the water. And I've got me some black here, and I've also put me some brown there. Get my big brush out here. I'm going to get my fingers dirty here. And I'm going to paint them brown first. Get the insides too. Remember, don't pick your skull up until you go wash your hands. You don't want any brown on that skull. Okay, I got one done. Looks like I'm going to have to get me some more brown here. Okay. Now we'll switch over to black. And you might think that that black is covering that brown completely, but it's not. know these videos, some of them seem few and far between, mostly far between from some of the comments I get. Well, you know, I'm not doing this just for you all. I'm doing it for the other people that are going to come along later too, hopefully. The ones maybe 5 years from now, or maybe next year, maybe a couple months from now, or whatever, go to my site and say, hey, you know, that buffalo skull really looks like an interesting project. I believe I'll do that. Or maybe it's something you can't do right at the moment, but you can do it a few months from now. You know, it'll be here for that, or be there for that. So, let's look here after that's soaked in a little bit and go back and touch these things up. Hopefully you can see that brown. It's still there. And that's what we want. Out there on the prairie, even though these horns are black, you know, out in the sun bleaches everything. Eventually these things will fall off and get lost. Okay, there we go. So, I'm going to let these dry. Let me speed it up here a little bit. And then we'll come back and we'll put them on the skull and see what we got. Okay, I've got the horns on there, just sort of a test fit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and glue my horns on, make sure they're in the right position, line them up good. Make sure you have the right horn to the right side and the left horn to the left side. And I think that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to move those back just a bit. That looks better. I'm going to set this out in the sun to dry because I still have a couple more things to do to it before it heads over to be varnished. Okay? So we'll be back in just a bit. It's been about 2-3 hours now. I set this outside, so this is good and dry. I've glued the horns on. So now I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing on it just to bring out these horns. I'm not going to dry brush the skull, but I will dry brush the horns. So I've got me my favorite dry brush tool, which is just a makeup brush. So I'm going to dab a little paint on it and get rid of it as much as I possibly can. And then just lightly dab it on there. That's plenty. Alright, now I'm going to take my other brush. Do a little straight white on there. think it's done. Now, by the time I get over to the workbench and get my varnish ready, this should be dry enough to go ahead and varnish, so that's where I'm going now. Okay, I'm over here at the workbench getting ready to varnish this thing. Now, I've got two things here. One of them is not good for a finish on your wood carvings. Can you guess which one it is? This one. Spray finish on a three-dimensional object does not work. When you spray finish on a three-dimensional object, most of the spray is going to hit the exposed flat surfaces, in this case the front of the skull. When you turn it this way, you're going to hit these areas here inside there. But as you're doing that, you're also getting more spray up here. And as you turn this thing around, you're just never going to get an even finish. So don't use this stuff. I know it's quick, it dries fast, and you can run up at the house or upstairs from your garage or whatever and say, hey honey, look here, it's all done, isn't it beautiful? Well, don't do that. You can do it tomorrow when this dries, and it'll look a lot better. I guarantee it. Anyway, trust me. Now, for brushes, you know, I used to go down and buy some expensive brushes, but lately I've been going down to Home Depot or Lowe's, and I'll buy these real cheap, made in Indonesia brushes. They're hair brushes. I mean, they're good and they're soft. They give a good finish. But the first thing I do when I get them is just go through it and try to pull out any loose bristles that are in there, and you won't get many of them. And then I'll use this thing 4 or 5 times, and then I'll just toss it. Okay, I've got me some polyurethane satin finish varnish here, and I'm just going to brush this on. Now this polyurethane varnish, I've been using it for quite a while, so if Judy can shine down into the can there, can you see the varnish? See how amber it is? When it's starting to get dark like that, it's getting close to where I'm going to toss it. But I can get one more thing out of it, so I'll go ahead and use it for this skull, because that amber color is just going to make it look that much better. Brush this all around. Because this brush is so cheap, I only think they cost maybe about $1.25 or something like that. You can really be abusive with it. Got lots of cross grain up here, so I'll put a little extra on there to let it soak in. And as this stuff soaks in and dries, it'll strengthen your wood a little. Not a lot, but a little. It's already soaked in over here, so I'll apply some more. Okay, got that. So now I'm going to run over and get me a paper towel. Okay, I got me a paper towel here. Don't use a cloth, don't use Kleenex, get you a paper towel. And then I'm just going to wipe off all this excess stuff here, much as I can get off of it. Plus it's had enough time to soak in. Yeah, there, get that stuff out of there. And there we go. Down in this groove. Bingo. So there you go. Now I'm just going to set this aside to dry, and once she's dry, I'll set it on a shelf somewhere and wait until I get the opportunity to put it with a carving. Toss that, wash that, and we're finished with the buffalo skull. So I hope you guys have had as much fun making this thing as I have, and until the next project, I'll talk to you later.